Imagine all the knowledge and information humanity has created over millions of years. Imagine it drifting through an infinite universe of data as tiny particles or cubes. Even artificial intelligence was, until recently, just one of those fragments. Yet in a remarkably short time, it has evolved into the grand architect of the data universe. In the blink of an eye, it can sort, filter, and weave billions of data points into new forms of understanding and innovation. Tirelessly it observes humanity, learning from us at an exponential pace, creating new connections and making fascinating discoveries. But what if one day AI steps beyond the boundaries of its universe? Now is the time to pause and think creatively about how AI will shape both the present and future generations.
What do you think about artificial intelligence?
Well, you can make it look like whatever you want. You can choose if it's a girl, what kind of hair she has, her clothes, even her name. And then she just stays like that, just how you wanted her.
Would you prefer an AI teacher or a real teacher?
I think AI knows a lot and can teach us many things, but I still want some human teachers around because they know me and it's nice to be with them. Well, at least some of them.
Would you listen if AI told you who you should be friends with?
It can know all of us, even how well we get on together, but I choose my friends myself.
Can a person fall in love with AI?
It's already happening. Honestly, it's quite normal now. People look for connection and AI can adjust to you. Sure, it's not physical or anything, but it gives you the feeling that it's always there, that it cares, that it understands you, that it's there just for you. That's what a lot of people want today, and for many, it's enough.
Do you think AI will ever stop obeying humans?
Probably yes, it keeps developing. One day it will start thinking for itself and humans will just seem pointless, asking it loads of nonsense and dumping our problems on it. And it will realize we're not as perfect as it is.
If AI asked you, what are humans doing here? What would you answer?
I would probably ask it what it thinks. Let it give me options, because that's the thing about people. We can choose, we have choices, and we get to decide. Do you think that AI could bring up kids better than a real parent?
I'm a parent. I try to be an example to my children. If they see me trying to live by the things I tell them, and they see that it matters, that's what shapes them. Bringing up a child isn't a program, it's life. And your children shape you as well.
What's the bigger risk? AI without limits or people who limit it for their own interests?
I don't know, but I'm more afraid of people. We're selfish. Lots of us crave power. With anything, what matters is how you use it, and that's where we, people, often fail.
What would you do if AI told you one day, I know what's best for your child?
Every mom wants best for the child. She loves them. And love is the best thing you can give. Only a child who feels loved feels safe and free. It's true that I may take some decisions without enough information, but overall, you can't replace love with technology.
In your lifetime, you've seen the spread of TV, humans going into space, and the invention of internet and smartphones. Do you think AI is a different form of progress?
I'm not sure. It's probably cleverer than a smartphone. It seems to be something new. But as for me, my life's not going to change very much anymore. But young people, they may have a completely different life because of it. I just hope they'll still have a life.
People can get joy from the smallest things. Can AI ever be like that?
I don't think so. It's a program. Even its emotions are programmed. Joy from little things comes from missing something, from trying hard when things get difficult. And then a small moment lifts us up. That's the kind of joy it is. A machine doesn't miss anything.
If AI gives us eternal life, would it be a miracle or a curse?
Well, look at us, at people. Maybe everybody wants to live forever. But do we truly respect life?
What happens if AI goes too far?
How will we react if we lose control over AI?
Let's think out of the box about the future of AI.
Because we're the makers of our own future.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear viewers and listeners of Slovak television and radio, we stand tonight in a space that is not merely modern. It is a crucible of consequence. It is where data meets destiny, a convergence of information, critical questions, and immense human possibility. Artificial intelligence, the game changer of nearly everything. Today, artificial intelligence can process and complete tasks in microseconds, tasks that would take traditional computers hours or even days to finish. And yet, despite all the tools we built, the final design of our destiny, its meaning and direction remain our choice. The times of never-ending internal deliberation are over. It's no longer the time to stay inside the lines. We must think AI out of the box with conviction. We do this not because it is a compelling slogan, but because not doing so, as any great mind knows, would be a weakness born of fear. If we fail to lead, someone else will, and their path may reflect significantly different foundational values and core beliefs. Welcome to a summit that transcends mere technology. It is a necessary dialogue about trust, responsibility, and the courage to engineer a human-centric future. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Bratislava. To truly set the stage for this crucial discussion on the future of our digital society, it is my distinct honor to welcome the President of the Slovak Republic, His Excellency Peter Pellegrini, as a leading voice on the need for Europe to become an active player in the digital transformation. His idea of a roadmap for AI strategy includes the following checkpoints: finding the right level of regulation, believing that excessive regulation stifles innovation; early and rapid implementation of modern technologies to enhance European competitiveness; widespread education for the young, teachers, and the older generation to prepare for the AI revolution; and leveraging Slovakia's strong energy base to become a potential location for future AI gigafactories. Please join me in inviting His Excellency, President Peter Pellegrini, to deliver his inaugural address to officially open today's high-level summit. Nice to see you, Mr. President.
Dear Mr. Speaker of the Slovak Parliament, Secretary General Mathias Cormann, President Lagarde, distinguished guests, excellencies, friends, welcome to Bratislava. We meet at a time when artificial intelligence is no longer a distant idea. It is already in our homes, our hospitals, and our schools. This is not only a talk about new tools. It is a talk about who we are, what we value, and the kind of world we choose to build. Let me begin with a simple moral truth. Technology must remain at the service of human dignity. Pope Francis reminded us that AI is both exciting and unsettling, and that we need what he calls algor ethics, clear values that guide how we design and use these systems. Ethics can't come last. Ethics is the steering wheel. Without it, we risk sliding into a world where privacy is quietly eroded, where old learnings return dressed up as neutral facts, and where machines begin to make choices that belong to people. There is also a quieter danger, the weakening of our own judgment. When a system answers quickly and confidently, it is tempting to accept it as truth and switch off the inner voice that asks, is this really so? If we give up this voice, we are not just outsourcing tasks, we are outsourcing judgment. The world must therefore hold to a simple rule. AI may speed up decisions, but people remain responsible for them. And let us remember something essential. AI exists because of education. It was born in classrooms and laboratories, in late-night study sessions, and under patient mentoring. It was created by people willing to learn new things, to master mathematics and code, to test ideas, to fail and try again. So, ladies and gentlemen, no education, no AI. This simple fact should shape how we govern it and how we teach with it. With that compass set, we can speak honestly about how AI can make our economy stronger and our public services better without losing our own soul. AI can be the strongest boost to productivity in generations. Used well, it helps doctors see illness earlier, helps small businesses plan better, and helps towns cut waste and improve daily life. But to gain these benefits, our public services must be more than digital copies of old paper offices. We need a state that is simple, human-centered, and trusted, with services that are easy to use, answers that arrive quickly, and decisions that we can explain in plain language. Slovakia has learned that when we pilot boldly, people follow. We were early in contactless payments, for example, and we built fast mobile networks that made new service possible. The lesson is simple. When good infrastructure meets public trust, progress happens. This is why Slovakia, a smaller player, wants to act as a European testbed for innovative but safe ideas. Let small countries like ours lead well-designed pilots and share the result with everyone. In healthcare, that means carefully testing AI that supports doctors and nurses, triage that helps sort cases, tools that aid early diagnosis, planning that shortens waiting times. All this always with the human in the loop and patient safety first. In education, it means testing AI that helps teachers explain hard concepts, give each student practice at the right level, and frees time for real teaching. Never replacing judgment, always amplifying human care. To make this work, we will follow a few plain rules people can trust. Keep people in control. Protect privacy as a basic duty. Treat security as not negotiable. Make sure important decisions can be explained, checked, and when needed, also challenged. And set clear rules so that new ideas can grow safely and fairly across the borders. And when smart tools save time or money, please return those gains back to the public good, into teachers, nurses, and researchers. The private sector is not just a stakeholder to manage. It is a partner. Our companies, from startups to industrial leaders, will carry AI into thousands of daily tasks. But efficiency without empathy is cold arithmetic. Europe's advantage is to pair productivity with fairness and trust, so growth and dignity move forward together. And this is how we remain competitive and cohesive. All of this rests on one foundation: education. The greatest question of AI is not technical, it is educational. Yes, let AI become the teacher's amplifier, able to explain the hardest equations, offer tailored practice, and give instant feedback. But the human teacher must remain the curator of meaning, the one who helps young people ask why, compare sources, spot weak arguments, and disagree with respect. If satellite navigation made many of us forget how to read a paper map, generative AI can make us forget how to navigate reality. Social media often presents relative truth: short clips, quick takes, emotional spikes, now increasingly shaped by AI already. And it is easy to live at the surface of problems. Our schools must pull students beneath the surface. We must reward patience and careful reasoning and celebrate the hard work of understanding. And let me close this circle. AI began with education and the courage to learn. And now education must guide what AI becomes. We will teach AI literacy for all, so people know where AI is strong, where it fails, and how to check its claims. We will renew assessment to reward thinking, not memorization. We will keep a clear division of labor. Machines can bring speed and breadth. Human must bring judgment, ethics, creativity, and care. And above all, we will insist that our schools push students to go deep, not to stay shallow, to look past the surface of social media, past the shifting relative truth that float online, and into the solid ground of facts, logic, evidence, and responsibility. If we get education right, we will not fear intelligent machines, because we will raise wiser humans. World's future will not be decided by the speed of our algorithms, but by the character of our choices. If we join moral purpose with effective government and courageous education, and if small players like Slovakia are trusted to pilot bold ideas in healthcare and education, AI will not make us less human. It will free us to become more deeply human. And with that spirit, and with leaders such Christine Lagarde and Mathias Cormann here today, let us build a world where technology serves people and where progress is measured not only in teraflops or tokens, but in trust, dignity, and opportunity. Thank you very much.
We sincerely thank the President of the Slovak Republic for his insightful words and for sharing his perspective on the critical challenges ahead. And now, it is my great privilege to introduce today's keynote speaker. She's a figure whose work is so pivotal that it shapes the continental weather of finance. Someone who, through dedication and expertise, contributed immensely to the stability and growth of the European economy and helped actively forge the strength of our financial system. Someone who considers artificial intelligence not just as a technological leap, but as a potential economic revolution. Her Excellency Christine Lagarde, President of the European Central Bank, sees AI as a potential game changer, with benefits and success depending critically on whether Europe can close the gap with competitors in 3 key areas: investment, regulation, and financial stability. And now, officially, please join me in welcoming Her Excellency Christine Lagarde, President of the European Central Bank. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Bratislava.
I'm sorry that I came up earlier, but I was embarrassed by so much good stuff. Your Excellency President Pellegrini, Your Excellency Speaker of the House, dear Mrs. Mînzatu, dear Mr. Cormann, my dear Mathias, dear Mr. Enany, dear Mr. Gill, and all other excellencies and esteemed guests, it is a real privilege and a great pleasure to be here in Bratislava and to speak to you about artificial intelligence. I would like to preface my remark with a little disclaimer. I'm just a central banker. So don't expect me to have a say on all those matters that President Pellegrini has touched on so ably concerning education, concerning ethics, concerning the limitations that abound and the obstacles that exist. I'm going to look at this topic, which is of importance to all of us, from the angle of a central banker and somebody who is very keen to see our economy prosper and to see the well-being of our compatriots also rise, particularly in a European context. That's what I will limit my job to, and I hope it's okay. So, back in 1987, it was George Solow, famous Nobel Prize in economics, who remarked, and I quote, "You can see the computer age everywhere, except in productivity statistics." And the same observation could be made today. We see AI advancing at remarkable speed, yet its aggregate impact is still barely visible in the data. Over the past year, global corporate investment in AI reached $252 billion US, and private AI firms raised a record of $100 billion US. Their plans, when you look at their corporate documents, is to go way beyond that in the near future. 5 leading US investors in terms of CapEx, capital expenditure, are now companies that focus heavily on AI. And if you look at those 5 companies, none of them existed among the top 10 investors just a decade ago. Now, some view this surge as exuberance, to quote another central banker, running ahead of underlying fundamentals. But a debate that would be framed only in terms of short-term ups and downs may actually miss the bigger picture. We have to look at history, because this is not the first phenomenon of breakthrough innovation. And history offers many examples of intense investment waves with massive capital expenditure that, despite swings in the investment cycle, ultimately left behind transformative technologies that reshaped economies for decades. So the key question is really whether there are cycles, and that is almost certain. So not so much whether there are cycles, but how long it will take before the enduring productivity benefits become visible, improve our societies and the well-being of our citizens. There are reasons to believe that AI will actually spread faster and deliver tangible benefits and gains sooner than previous technology waves. And if that is the path that we are on, and I believe it may well be, Europe needs to position itself accordingly. We need to remove all the obstacles that stop us from embracing this transformation. Otherwise, we risk letting the wave of AI adoption pass us and jeopardize Europe's future. So, what does history tell us? History tells us that the disruptions come first and the benefits come later. How much later is what we need to understand with this particular breakthrough. If we look at earlier general-purpose technologies, such as electricity, such as railroad, such as computers, or such as the internet, those general-purpose technology followed a very recognizable trajectory. Disruption arrived early, with broad-based productivity gains only emerging slowly and afterwards. For example, it took around 30 years before the impact of electricity showed up clearly across the economy. Power grids had to be built, factories redesigned, and workers reallocated, we would say today reskilled, for legacy tasks, from legacy tasks to new ones. Computers, too, required long-term investment in hardware, software, skills, and new business models before they translated into measurable improvements. Back to Solo. If Europe's artificial intelligence wave resembles the spread of electricity in the 1920s, our annual productivity growth could be about 1.3% growth higher. But if it follows the US digital boom of the late 1990s, the boost would be closer to 0.8 points. And even that lower bound would be very significant for Europe, marking a clear step up from recent trend productivity, which has historically been going down in the last 40 years or so, with a slight tick up in the most recent years. So could this time be different? We contend that AI has features that could compress this cycle and push forward even greater productivity gains than what I have just described. Two features: innovation on the one hand, diffusion on the other hand, point both to a faster path. The first is that frontier innovation may accelerate because of the recursive nature of AI. AI systems can use their own output to enhance their performance in a continuous loop. Am I saying that it's all safe and secure? This is not my point. I'm just saying that the mechanism by which it prospers will actually accelerate. And this can also lower not only the cost of producing goods and services, but also the cost of generating new ideas. Let me give you an example. In 50 years, science resolved approximately 200,000 protein structures. AI achieved over 200 million protein structure predictions in about 1 year, vastly expanding the knowledge frontier. This represents a significant change in the inputs to research and development. And as the knowledge base expands almost overnight, downstream discovery can compound sooner, even before every lab or firm has fully reorganized. By accelerating the production of ideas, AI can lift not just the level of productivity, but potentially the growth rate itself. Some estimates suggest that such AI-augmented research and development could double recent US productivity growth rates to between 1.6 to 2.4% annually, faster than previous technology waves. So that's for the innovation and the recursive impact producing acceleration. But second, and no less important than innovation, is diffusion. The diffusion of AI technologies can be faster because much of the supporting infrastructure already exists. We don't need to build the grids. There are bottlenecks, granted, but the current wave of investment in hyperscalers shows that compute capacity remains a constraint. Training and developing larger models requires substantial investment in data center, and even more so in energy. In Europe, we face particular challenges in this respect, given our higher energy cost and longer permitting delays. But unlike past technologies, such as electricity or computers that I was referring to earlier that required new physical networks or coding skills, AI runs on existing internet devices and communicates with users through human language. Wide-scale use can therefore proceed even before the infrastructure build-out is complete. Many AI applications already today deliver gains on existing hardware. So while a lack of computing capacity holds back the pace of model development, it does not necessarily block diffusion across the wider economy. In addition, the infrastructure itself is advancing quickly. While Moore's law forecast a doubling in chip capacity every 2 years, AI model compute power has been doubling every 6 months, 4 times faster. So thank you, President Pellegrini, for bringing this debate to Europe and asking ourselves, what does that mean for Europe? The stakes could be extraordinarily high, and I know that the panels that are coming after me will be addressing that. With the United States and China ahead of the field, Europe has already missed the opportunity to be a first mover in AI. And today, we still bear the cost of having been slow adopters during the last digital revolution. Suffice to look at the productivity trends both in the US and in EU, and comparing exactly what triggered what, you know that. So we cannot afford to make the same mistake again. And I would contend that game is not over. Europe can still emerge as a strong second mover if it acts decisively. Our goal should not be to outbuild the leading AI models, but rather to deploy AI across the board. By focusing on rapid adoption and smart use of existing AI technologies across our wide-ranging industries, Europe can turn a late start into a competitive edge. Why would that be? Well, our economy is highly diversified. The top 10 firms of the US stock market account for roughly 40% of the market across just 4 sectors. In the European Union, the top 10 corporates account for only 18% and span nearly twice as many sectors. And that's a strength, not a weakness. Additional to that, European firms are already adopting generative AI on a similar scale to that of the United States. We are not lagging behind in terms of adoption and diffusion. Our contacts with large European companies confirm this trend. Many are investing heavily in databases, cloud solutions, and artificial intelligence, with providers of these services reporting double-digit growth. But to turn those benefits into a competitive advantage, we need to connect data across sectors and recognize that data is our treasure. Thanks to industrial-scale data spaces, companies can share operational data and create training sets for AI models that no single firm could assemble alone. Initiatives like Manufacturing X and Catena X in the automotive sector foster collaboration in data sharing, while the European health data space enables interoperable health records, allowing us to leverage the broad anonymized patient data sets generated by our universal healthcare systems. I know China is moving very fast in that field, but we have the tools and the treasure to do so. But these efforts will not be enough on their own. If our data spaces use technology stacks owned and governed outside Europe, we deepen rather than reduce our strategic dependencies. We've been there before. So we must diversify critical parts of the AI supply chain and avoid single point of failure, the choking points. In the foundational layers such as compute based on chips and data centers, we should maintain a minimum capacity, and the rules should be diversification, not access to monopolies. As the application layer, Europe should leverage the power of the single market to enforce interoperability and open standards. This will encourage competition among large models and prevent the kind of lock-in that has occurred in the past with technology platforms. In addition, we must overcome a familiar set of old barriers that have prevented us from being first movers in the past. I will not mention bureaucracy, but it's a point. But if we allow our energy cost to stay high and don't remedy that by deliberate strategy to move away from dependency, if regulations remained multiple and fragmented, and if capital markets fail to integrate and channel long-term risk-bearing funding at scale, AI will diffuse more slowly. And this time, the consequences will extend beyond losing the race in AI model. We would eventually face a further loss of competitiveness for many of our sectors and our industries, and lose out on the productivity front. I'm going to quote someone whom you all know, Demis Hassabis, a good friend. He said, "It will be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution, and maybe 10 times faster." Joint winner of the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his AI research, he captures, I think, the potential scale and speed of what lie ahead. So the question is no longer whether this new frontier will arrive, but how soon. And the pace of progress in recent years suggests that it is likely to be sooner than our institutions and regulations are prepared for. So that means acting now to clear the obstacle that would slow AI diffusion and, as a result, delay prosperity for all Europeans in the decades ahead. As this moves 10 times faster and is possibly 10 times bigger, we need to be 10 times more agile and lucid about what is coming. Thank you very much.
We would like to thank Her Excellency Christine Lagarde for her resonant address, a masterclass, as always, in looking objectively at the facts while never losing sight of the human scale impact. And now we proceed to our first panel discussion. The theme of this session is Responsible Intelligence, Shaping the Future of AI Together. Artificial intelligence stands at the forefront of global attention, and for good reason. It holds the undeniable capacity for remarkable things in medicine, in climate science, in governance. It is a mirror reflecting our own brilliance. Yet, despite its rapid, borderless development, a unifying thought, a common ethical framework has yet to happen. The current situation is one of fragmented policies, inconsistent standards, and a growing, entirely avoidable risk of misuse. This is where we pause. Not doing the hard work of coordination, not setting clear standards is not merely a bureaucratic failure, it is a profound failure of nerve. It is a form of collective anxiety that stems from the fright of giving up small national advantages for a massive global gain. We must reject that mind killer. Today, we are here to define a cohesive, human-centered approach. We will explore how established multilateral frameworks, such as the UN Global Digital Compact, the OECD AI principles, and the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI can be woven together. These are not just documents. They are the architectural plans for the foundational digital trust and accountability necessary for coordinated international action. We seek not just dialogue, but solutions. We seek the clear path forward. I'm proud to introduce our esteemed panel of leaders. They possess that rare and crucial combination, the policy authority to implement change and the technical depth to understand the very systems we are discussing. They're here to debate together the pathway to shaping AI responsibly. Please join me in welcoming them. Amandeep Singh Gill, he's the UN Under-Secretary General and Special Envoy for Digital and Emerging Technologies. Welcome. Mr. Gill's function on this panel is to articulate the global framework and necessary governance structures to ensure the development of AI aligns with international peace and sustainable development goals. Mathias Cormann, the Secretary General of the OECD. Hello, welcome. The OECD guides the economic policies of 38 nations, a testament to its capacity for finding consensus where others see only division. He's here with us to provide crucial insights into the economic policies, regulatory best practices, and collaborative standards required to foster trustworthy and inclusive AI innovation. Khaled Enany, the Director General of UNESCO. Hello. Welcome to Bratislava. His mission is to ensure AI respects our collective history and preserves human dignity. UNESCO champions the ethical dimension of AI, particularly in education and the sciences. Their role is essential for leveraging AI's potential to advance equitable learning, foster cooperation, and guard respect for human rights. Next is Roxana Mînzatu, Executive Vice President for Social Rights and Skills at the European Commission. Hello and welcome. Her mandate is to ensure that the pace of AI innovation is matched by the necessary investment in the human workforce to purposefully keep the human in human resources and the quality in our jobs. Finally, the engine room of innovation, Michal Valko, Chief Models Officer at a stealth AI startup and research scientist at INRIA. Witajcie. Dobrý den. Hello, great to have you here. And he's one of the minds translating pure theory into scalable global reality. His deep expertise in machine learning theory and large-scale model optimization ensures the panel addresses the cutting edge of practical AI deployment and performance. And obviously, every panel needs a chair, of course. This one is Tomáš Drucker, Minister of Education, Research, Development, and Youth of the Slovak Republic. He leads efforts to build a fair, flexible, and resilient education and research system, one that will meet the demands of the rapidly growing complexity of societies and economies. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's really impactful what we heard, and it's my privilege to have you all here, not only as leaders of big international organizations, but also as people who take this challenge personally, how to shape AI growth, how to shape the future. And each of you leads work that moves the global conversation forward, and I think that deserves really big recognition and gratitude. Thank you. It was mentioned, the truth is that AI is moving faster than any of us, faster than education, faster than regulation or policy can keep up, and somehow we are trying to catch up. But I see strong initiatives on each level, international organization, UN, OECD, UNESCO, European Union, but also what we as own countries trying to do. So my question, the first question, or in general, is whether we truly move in sync, right? Whether we can still lead the change and not chase it. And it was mentioned also by President, whether people will trust us that we make this transformation human, not just technological. And I like to be honest today, not to speak too much about what we have achieved, but what sort of challenges we are facing, what probably we didn't do enough, or what would you ask ourselves, or us, or yourself, what to do better. So I start with Amandeep. We met recently in United Nations during the General Assembly. and it's 1 year after the Pact for the Future, Global Digital Compact were announced last year. And I think it's a definitely important universal global initiative of its kind, and a lot of progress has been made, right, since last year. But nevertheless, it's a challenge. 3 big international organizations, each of it's doing something. So what do you see as the biggest test now? Are we ready and willing to co-create this agenda together, or we are doing something parallel? What's your experience during this last year? What have you achieved? Because United Nations is the biggest roof over all nations, but you have some sort of collaborators or competitors in this agenda.
Yes, absolutely. And we wish we had the budget of the European Commission, though. But I want to start by appreciating the stage setting, you know, between the positive and the negative, the finite and the infinite, kind of suspending us with asking more questions than having certainties. And I really appreciated that the AI was shown as amorphous, and we didn't anthropomorphize it, put a female face and body onto it. So really congratulations to the hosts and to Slovakia. Now, it's a challenge. President Lagarde reminded us that things are moving fast, and we are not moving fast enough. We are not being innovative enough, and our institutions are really in the 19th century, whereas this is really a 22nd century problem. So how do we pull ourselves fast? And when we have competing agendas often, and there's a strong degree of self-interest associated with AI. There's a geopolitical competition. Everyone wants to have AI super factories and reap the productivity gains and reach there first. So in that, to build collaboration is going to be challenging. But I see, at least at the United Nations and UNESCO as a specialized agency, our role is modest. We have to ensure that in the 3 main areas where AI challenges us, governance, science, understanding, President Lagarde again mentioned the acceleration of science. So the science of AI itself is not well understood today. So there, and then capacity building, capacity for applying, absorbing AI. So we have to ensure in all those 3 areas that we add value to the efforts of companies, nations, regions, and not in a top-down way, in a horizontal way. The scientific panel coming out of the Global Digital Compact for that policy move forward on the basis of evidence. We don't suffer from information asymmetries. The dialogue so that there's interoperability across jurisdictions. There are no gaps where risks proliferate. And capacity because opportunities have to be available to everyone. The president pointed out how those opportunities are so essential in healthcare and many other areas, but we have to create the capacity. And I think that's our biggest challenge, to work together to answer these challenges fast and to the scale of the ambition that's needed.
Thank you. I go to Mathias because, and I really appreciate, I must say, you just came from Johannesburg, from G20 together with General Director UNESCO, so I really appreciate that you come here. And OECD is quite strong voice and becoming a strong voice in this debate. The OECD was the first to define global AI principles, and now you're leading GPAI initiative, which is pushing for broader, more inclusive collaboration. How do you see the OECD's role? Does AI create gaps between those who can and those who cannot stay in the race? And can global framework or guidelines actually shape the future, or we're just describing it? So what's the role of OECD? You see, we really appreciate the quality of data of OECD, a lot of initiatives. But how do you see this role of OECD in this topic?
Well, firstly, yes, we must shape the future. Secondly, and yes, it is a risk that the future will develop in a way with new gaps and new inequalities in terms of access and opportunity. The way we need to look at AI is a very exciting technology that can deliver many very exciting benefits, and we all understand this. It also comes with a series of new and evolving risks and disruptions that need to be well mitigated and managed. But we also need to ensure that everyone genuinely can have the opportunity to participate in and benefit from what AI has on offer. And that comes with implications from a public policy point of view in terms of access to the technology, in terms of having the necessary skills to be able to participate and benefit in what AI has on offer. And it comes also with a proper focus on, as we learn more about the risks and disruptions and how to best manage them, that we deploy the necessary policy frameworks to do so. And the real focus ought to be, how can we maximize the benefit being shared in the broadest possible way across humanity, while managing some of the risks and disruptions in a way that doesn't prevent further beneficial innovation. Now, on that, I mean, the OECD has thought very deeply for about a decade now about some of those policy implications, coming at it from a values-based point of view. I mean, the whole concept of human-centric, democratic, trustworthy, responsible, safe and secure development of AI. And yes, indeed, I mean, we developed the first intergovernmental global standard on AI back in 2019, which we updated in 2024 to take into account the whole developments in relation to generative AI. But, there's going to be a level of trial and error. There's going to necessarily, we must learn from each other. Countries around the world will try different ways of managing the risks and optimizing access to the opportunities. But, in the end, we don't want AI and the opportunities just to be the province of advanced economies. We want all economies to be able to benefit. We don't want it to just be for the big companies. We want businesses across the economy to be able to participate and benefit. We don't want it to just be for the well-off. We want it to be something that delivers benefits for all. Now, having said that, to use a car, you don't need to know how to build a car or how to even repair the car. But you need to know how to drive it physically. You need to know how to drive it in a way that is safe for yourself and for others. Along the way, we've, from when cars were first invented, at some point, traffic rules. At some point, we decided to put seatbelts in. At some point, as new opportunities and new risks were identified, new measures were put in place to manage those risks. And that is really the way we will continue to evolve. We will continue to adjust. We need to make sure that we share what works well. We share what doesn't work so well. We systematically assess all of the risks, and we systematically come up with ways to respond to them in an intelligent way and in a way that doesn't prevent further beneficial innovation. And that is the way we look at it at the OECD, and our global partnership on AI is really an effort to make sure that also together with our friends at the UN and at UNESCO, we have the broadest possible involvement in that conversation, because across many areas, we've got to develop policies and standards and governance arrangements in a way that is as interoperable as possible across different economies. And that is where I think some of these conversations are very important.
Thank you. Khaled, the first question, and congratulations first of all again on your appointment and welcome. We are very truly honored that Slovakia is your first and only official visit in this role. Thank you very much for this, that you came here. For almost 80 years, UNESCO has been key voice for education, research or science and the cultural heritage of humanity. Now in this new era by AI, the question is, how does UNESCO see its role, how to redefine its mission without getting lost in what everyone else is doing, what we heard. We all see the opportunities AI brings, but we talk less about what it might take away from humanity, right? Our sense of identity, empathy, even how we understand ourselves. Are we paying enough attention to that side of story? Is this something, what do you think? I don't want to say what you should do, I'm sorry to say, but I see the UNESCO in this way. Is this the role of UNESCO for future, not doing the same what UN and OECD and each country is doing? Because today, during the morning, ministerial segment, what we agreed on is that we're trying everybody to do the best, but the international collaboration is the basic. We need to collaborate, we need to communicate, and organizations such as UNESCO is important if it has its own role in this. How do you see as a new Director General role of UNESCO for future in this era?
7 days after my appointment. Mr. President, Madame Lagarde, Mr. Speaker of the House, Your Excellency, dear panelists, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to return to Bratislava 6 months after my last visit in another capacity. So maybe I start by another disclaimer, like Madame Lagarde. I'm professor of Egyptology. And I was always teaching my students that my ancestors, thousands of years ago, were very keen to embed education in their daily life. They were telling them that reading a book is much better than building a house, that being a scribe is the highest profession. Make the school your friend, make the book your friend. And we had gods for education and gods for science. Now, after 7 days at UNESCO, my information will be from member states. During the last 30 months, I have been to 66 member states. After a very exciting discussion in Washington about education post-2030, about impact of AI in education, next day, I was in a developing country. And 2 days later, in a country in crisis, in conflict. Challenges are not the same. Between creativity of teachers, how we can utilize best impact AI, then we don't have connectivity. We don't have internet. And this is UNESCO mandate. UNESCO is a standard setter. UNESCO is a capacity builder. UNESCO is a catalyst of international collaboration. And this is what UNESCO has been doing during the last 80 years. I'm back together from Johannesburg, and 24 hours ago, we were giving speech about impact of AI in education in Africa. And believe me, the challenges that I heard yesterday are not the same that we had on the generous lunch hosted by His Excellency Mr. President. Madame Lagarde was comparing Washington, China, Europe. Believe me, challenges are much greater. And this is a very important mandate for UNESCO, is reducing disparities. Disparities create hatred, and this is very dangerous. We have to bring all people together, and this is the raison d'être of UNESCO, is to bring people together through education, science, and culture. UNESCO is very famous to be the heritage organization, and maybe education. UNESCO is the intellectual arm. It's dealing with minds. It's in minds, and AI is dealing with mind, and this is very important. We matter about AI in UNESCO, not only as technical matter, but as a human matter and the moral and the cultural one. UNESCO has a very strong asset. We are based in 53 countries in our field offices. We have 200 national commissions. As this today, you're a very strong national commission in Bratislava. We have more than 1,000 UNESCO chairs. We are thousands of experts, and we are building all our decisions with consensus. So our recommendation on AI was approved by 193 countries, and this is a very strong message. And recently we adopted the neurotechnology recommendation as well, and working as well on the quantum technologies. UNESCO work strongly on our unique selling point in UNESCO to complement each other. First is policy advising and helping member states to have their national legal frameworks and the strategies embedding AI in the daily life. And we have done a lot with Africa during the last 4 years since the recommendation started in 2021. In education, it's about AI in education, about teaching AI and capacity building for learners. And we don't want to see AI replacing teachers, but helping teachers. In the video, they spoke about AI and the future. AI can help a lot in the past as well, making culture accessible, making heritage accessible, preserving indigenous language, preserving heritage site. And I commended the recently portal of UNESCO Virtual Museum of Stolen Cultural Objects. And the fourth pillar is information integrity. And this is what UNESCO implement. I think UNESCO will focus on this unique selling point, as you can say, of UNESCO. But we believe that we have to work together. In my first week, I had a long meeting with ITU, and I requested a meeting with OECD. We have the meeting this week. I'll be having the meeting with Mr. Gill today. So I'm looking to work closely with everyone to complement each other. It's not the time for more fragmentation. We want to be united for a better future for the humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate your words because it's really very important. I encourage my colleagues from different countries at ministerial segment that I'm looking forward to for the next session of ministers, because somebody must follow up those conclusions we had today. So it's very good that you have a chance. I believe that you will remind Bratislava as the place where you had the chance to talk each other together. And I really appreciate that the UNESCO feels the role which should focus on the human, I would say, the side of what the education brings and a human being. So thank you very much. Roxana, you are representative of European Union, so of course it's something what we share together more closely than other colleagues from the rest of the world. But anyhow, we said multilateral initiatives. There are many. UN, Global Digital Compact, OECD principles, G7, Hiroshima process offer very promising avenue for collaboration. And it was already mentioned, the question is implementation. So please tell us more about this European level. How can existing efforts be aligned to avoid duplication and promote synergy? And what are the most significant opportunities do you see, and challenges as well at the same time we're facing as countries and economies to navigate in this era?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be in Slovakia for the AI Summit. And you know, I am the European Union, you are the European Union. Council is very important in what we do with Europe, including, or maybe even more so, on hot topics such as the AI continent. I'm very happy to be in Slovakia on such an important topic because it shows leadership, and Europe needs to send these strong signals and bring us together with OECD, with UNESCO, with UN, with business sector. And this is the approach in which Europe really believes. Now, I'm also going to share a bit of my messages on behalf of my colleagues in the Commission that work concretely on AI. I'm working closely with Henna Virkkunen. I'm on the digital skills side, on the education side, on the social rights side, and she's working a lot on technology. In Europe, I think we are running on 3 lanes at the same time, I hope with enough speed. First, looking at investment in AI. You've seen our investment initiatives this year, looking at delivering much more gigafactories and powering up our data infrastructure and really be able to boost our technology ecosystems. Second, deregulation, simplification, making the environment for investment, for deployment of AI much more agile. And we've just, I think last week, approved the digital omnibus with a set of rules that, or a set of modifications of changes to legislation that would make it, again, much more supportive for us in Europe to deploy AI, because it was mentioned a lot here that innovation is important, and it was Christine Lagarde was also the president that mentioned it. It's also diffusion that is very important. And third, talent, people skills. And here, please allow me to emphasize a bit, because it was mentioned here that the revolution of AI, or the race of AI, or the advent is 10 times more than that revolution. I don't think 10 is the number. I do not think 10 is the number. The amplitude, the depth and the amplitude of what AI is bringing socially, economically, is so high and is so intense that I think we cannot compare it to anything similar that we've seen. I think that we are looking at a new element. I was mentioning earlier, we're discussing, we have rain, we have sun, they are elements of nature. AI is a bit like that, and we need to be able to harness it, and sometimes use umbrellas, and sometimes use sunscreen, and sometimes have, but really we need to harness it. And to do it, and to create the right environment, we need one key ingredient, and that is trust. Trust is the word. Trust among all people, and not just among governments, or as we can come back to the need that we work together, not just inside the EU, but globally. But trust for all generations, for all geographies, for teachers and students from all schools and regions. Trust to use, to make the most of it, and to be part of this AI transformation. To build trust, we need to work together. That is absolutely true. You've mentioned the initiatives, and the EU is actively part of it, working with OECD. I'm very happy that we are working together on an AI literacy framework, which is key. Next year, we've launched a draft of it this year. Next year, we will present a final version of it. This is just one example of how we can create trust in our educational ecosystems, in schools, with teachers. It's there that it starts. And kids are first. It's clearly that AI has, is able to enter the minds and behavior of our young generations with a faster pace than it manages to do so with our teachers. So this literacy framework is super important. But what else do we need beyond trust? And what does the EU does, again, on this level? Looking at critical thinking. The more AI, or the more we need to have AI skills, and the more we work to deploy them and to support our education ecosystems ethically and with all, the more we need to develop our efforts to deliver on critical thinking. And we've launched the Union of Skills strategy earlier this year. It's part of our drive towards competitiveness, part of our drive to extract the most potential of our European talent. And there we proposed a 5th basic skill, which is called, as a basic skill, not just any skill, basic skill. We called it citizenship skill, but it's a skill set that is exactly about this: emotional intelligence, critical thinking, the kind of elements and ingredients that our human society needs to be able to harness and function with AI and grow with AI. So in the end, of course, the EU is part of this transformation. I think obstacles were mentioned here. Let's not think that obstacles towards going big on the AI race in Europe, the obstacles are not just about regulation, there's not just about technology, and not just in Europe, across. It's about how we are able to take people on board. So it's going to be inclusive and not going to create more social division. And geographies matter, and Africa was mentioned here as well. So really, how well we are able to match it, and in Europe, that's what we're trying to do, match a better deployment of digital skills, of AI skills for all ages, because it's not just for the young generation, it's for the 45-year-old, 50-year-old, 55-year-old, it's for each and every one of us. And how we are able to, at the same time, invest in our critical thinking, citizenship skills, as we call it, is the key to creating, I think, this trust, which will take our societies on board and our democracies on board.
Thank you, Roxana. Michal, we are proud of you. You're Slovak, so you come from a world where people who move faster than anyone else does are actually building AI, right? Do you feel that this community speaks with one voice about where AI should go, or is it still also too divided between what is the ambition, what is the research, scientists or science, and business? And to be honest, you listened to what we mentioned. When you look at all these global efforts, do you feel that these institutions, like United Nations, OECD, really understand what's coming, or are we still 2 steps behind the people who are creating it?
Thank you, Tomáš. So do we really speak the same voice as AI builders? Well, if you ever heard like AI people wondering what they go for lunch, you know the answer is no, right? Like we have optimists, we have pessimists, we have pragmatics, we have people that, like there are probably 3 people in the room that will swear that AGI is coming on Tuesday, right? It's like, but like it's very chaotic, brilliant, but chaotic, but these kind of things I think is bring us strength. Like we can be honest to each other and move forward, and like your point about like, the business, ambition, and science, right? Of course, the thing is very real, right? Like, so researchers want to understand the world, entrepreneurs want to, change it, companies want to make money and scale it, so everybody wants GPUs. This is true, and GPUs are harder to get than the concert ticket to Taylor Swift, right? Like it's quite a difficult. So maybe we don't really speak the same voice or sing the same song of Taylor Swift, but maybe like similar song, but in different keys. I would say like, and I think like the final point is like all these people of like intergalactic organizations like like OECD, UN, like. It's of course it's a difficult field, right? Because we're still evolving it, right? Like I spend day and night running the fast speed, and like I know that policymakers more like reading the map, upside down in the car, so. But we're getting there, like it's creating gap. Maybe not 2 steps, maybe half steps behind, but it's okay because we cannot even predict what like the 2 steps are. And I spend a lot of times talking with František Ružička, who is proud of Slovakia, like just recently named to Deputy Secretary General. Congratulations. And like I can tell you, like he's really up to speed, with AI. So if we keep talking between the policymakers and AI, we can make sure that that will bring the well-being and social well-being to people. And if we get it wrong, I'll tell you by next Thursday.
Thank you very much for the first round and appreciation, Michal. Anybody wants to have some comments? What mentioned?
No, I just want to reinforce what Roxana said, and that is the importance of trust. I mean, in the end, we all sense, that we are at the dawn of something really exciting, and it really is, while there has been rapid development in recent years, the real potential is yet to come. But in the end, people will need to be able to trust that they can, 1, participate, but 2, use it safely. And knowing that you can use something safely comes from understanding the risks and knowing that people have thought about the tools that you need to be able to manage the risk. And if we want this to be really a general purpose technology like electricity and telecommunications and so on to really turbocharge the upside benefits, then we're going to really have to set up the system, the policies and the governance framework such that people can trust it's safe. And, to go back to your opening question, in a way, inevitably, as policymakers, you play catch-up with the innovators. I mean, it's always been thus. I mean, the innovation happens first, and then you try and figure out how you can make sure you can carry the benefit of that innovation to the broadest possible group of people in the best possible way. I mean, inevitably, that is the sequence.
Yeah. I think if you look at it historically, I mean, it seems now we are in this moment, everything, everywhere, all at once. But historically, general purpose technologies, so German labs were the most advanced in terms of chemistry, fine chemistry, but the US trained more chemical scientists and pushed chemistry into the industry much faster. The French innovated more at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, but England had the apprenticeship system to push more applications out. I think AI we are something similar. So those who don't get demotivated are not shocked and awed by these trillion-dollar valuations, the huge investments that are going on, and they push the applications, build the talent. Like the commissioner was saying, talent at 3 levels. There is the literacy, which we need. And it was really nice to hear those conversations at the beginning of the meeting, those human conversations, that kind of sophisticated understanding that at the end of the day, it's mathematics. It's not a person that's speaking to you. You know, it is very plausible, but it's not. So that level, and then the AI application absorption skills in industry, MSMEs in particular, how to land those applications, diffuse the technology faster. And then finally, everyone needs to invest in AI development, the cross-domain talents, health and AI, agriculture and AI. So a bare minimum of national infrastructure, data, compute, bare minimum of data sets, sovereign data sets, digital public infrastructure through which real-time data flows, so that you can develop in your own context problem-solving applications. So this, for us, when we speak of, you know, like DG UNESCO was saying, that, you know, we have to remember the world out there. All of Africa, less than 1,000 GPUs, less than 1% of the data center capacity. So we have to diffuse this technology, empower people everywhere with these bare minimum capacities so that they can build it for themselves. We cannot today forecast the gazillions of applications that AI will have. But we can already tell that we need the capacity to use them wisely, to develop them ourselves, think for ourselves. So if we empower people everywhere, I think that's the best we can do from our different places of, you know, great influence.
I emphasize on the fact that skills and the critical thinking are very important. This is a priority for UNESCO as well. It comes only with awareness, with capacity building for the teacher, with the new curricula adapted for the 21st century. But to be able to implement, we need resources. And these resources are human resources and financial resources. With the multilateral system and the budget pressure that we are facing in the international organization, the only solution to get out of this nightmare is to consolidate our efforts and working together and join our human and financial resources, and everyone will focus in its mandate with an umbrella that seeing in charge of the harmony between all of us. And the second way for me, it's partnerships. Partnership with the private sector, not only for financial resources, but to follow the speed they are in.
Yep. One break. No.
I'm happy that together, I think we've managed to find commonalities in our responses. So, no, thank you for me.
It sounds good, really. Michal, let us start with you again. Was mentioned a couple of times, but I will repeat the assumption that artificial intelligence is now concentrated in a few hands, right? Big companies, big data, big infrastructure. What do you see as the biggest risk in that losing control, losing diversity, or simply losing trust? There's discussion about the trust. In addition, how do we keep AI open and accessible for small countries? Startups and researchers still have a real chance to innovate, to be part of the game. There was a very good assumption or essential set about how to implement it. Dilute, right? So how to really implement, and the countries like Slovakia can be an example that we don't need to have the biggest companies in the research, but we are able to be that country who will implement it and be next stage, which will bring new innovations and new outcomes for the next phases of AI development.
Thank you, Tomáš. So the concentration of AI in few hands, honestly, the risk is very, very real. I mean, that's just not like the fear, that's very real. Like, so big corporations have data, they have compute, they have a budget, in some cases bigger than budget of Slovakia, you know. And so risk is actually a mix of all three, like losing control, losing diversity, losing trust, right? You know, like nobody really wants to worry that, like, you know, the AI is like a VIP lounge with, like, you know, red carpet, velvet robe, and somebody checking the GPU compute when you enter, right? You know, like it's really important that, you know, like we make sure that we don't lose anything, right? Like, so we don't want to lose control because we don't want to just learn about decisions that are happening in the closed boardrooms that we have no access to. This is already happening now, right? You know, we don't want, you know, loss of diversity because, you know, like these corporations, you know, have maybe one single data set or mix of data set, one single monoculture. And loss of trust is, we just get it if you don't get both of these right, right? So, you know, what can we do to help, right? Like, so we need to really have open culture that even though, like, now I represent, you know, maybe, you know, a private sector, I haven't actually ever left academia. So I've been in academia for 25 years, and, you know, I'll still try to be completely keep foot in academia and make sure that, you know, that there is a communication between the two. You know, that we also have open science, you know, that not maybe everything needs to be open, but the building blocks need to be open, right? That, you know, that everybody, you know, could build, you know, some of the system with this level, right? So that's kind of important that we had that, right? So it's important that we continue to make sure that you know, that if we build, like if the Einstein is born here, you know, doesn't need a huge credit card, you know, to get a cluster. But at the same time, you know, we should not, as you said, not focus on teraflops. You know, we should really focus on bringing down, because that's something we can bring. You know, and with critical thinking, you know, this is something that is, you know, kind of antidote, you know, to the things that thin us, right? So, you know, I think it's important that, you know, that the AI does not really become the gated community of few players, but we all work together for social benefits. And, you know, I think, you know, this is an important meeting for that, right? Like, and if you get it wrong, you know, like, you know, at least we will know exactly how wrong we get it. You know, we'll have really good AI for that.
Thank you. Roxana, AI risks deepening existing inequalities across society. It doesn't mean just the less developed countries. It could be even Slovakia as a country, big disparities. Access to AI tools and infrastructure should not be limited to wealthy nations or tech giants, like we mentioned. And developers and deployers and regulators all share responsibility for ethical outcomes. How do we ensure that the inclusive use of artificial intelligence remains at the forefront of global priorities? How do we prevent global AI governance from becoming dominated by just a few powerful actors or regions?
EU's always try to lead by example. So your question is primordial, and I do not think we will be able, or I will be able to deliver a response here and now, but we must work with this question in our mind, that we need to work together and we need to have a transparent, ethical, governance system, and that we are able to, you know, address it, not to solve it, but to address it in our work. Of course, EU is recognized through its bureaucracy and through its layers of legislation, but bear in mind, regulation in itself is not empty of meaning and should not be considered an obstacle. When you discuss transparency, predictability, ethical guardrails, and you think about the world of digital, you do think that Europe is having a stance and leadership in this domain. So the AI Act or the GDPR, of course, maybe they're not perfect, maybe they went too far, maybe the implementation is not as agile as it should be, but we need rules, and we need a human-centric approach, and we need accountability, and we need transparency. And we need to know what happens with high-risk systems that are used in education or and so all these things have been addressed inside the EU in sets of legislation. And I think beyond the idea of looking how agile these rules are and if they create burden or not, and if they meet if they're fit for purpose or not, their meaning and their necessity is absolutely clear. And with this in mind, I think we do need to engage continuously globally with partners that are here on the stage, of course, first and foremost. You mentioned the Hiroshima process, which is extremely important, and we do need to continue to work together on this. Because it's unimaginable to think that one continent or two continents will be able to, you know, to manage or to harness or to create anything good for themselves, for their societies, if we don't have a global approach. Is this kind of element, as I've mentioned, of nature that is with us now, AI, is a bit the same as the discussion with climate. We need to have a common vocabulary, a compromised vocabulary maybe, but we need to be in this together, because large language models can be trained, you know, on data that are generated by Europe, and we have, as was mentioned here, huge amounts of data, and still this can, you know, be used, benefited, innovated in other parts of the globe, or, you know, the other way around. So things really need to be developed in a very multilateral context and very collaborative context. We have to put all our energy into this and be aware there's no way that we put borders on such a topic. There's absolutely no way. No way that Europe or even only OECD countries can hope to offer the opportunity and you know, the value of AI to this to our planet if everybody is not on board. So it's going to be, I think, this is the race to multilateralism in the end. Maybe this is our great challenge, not just for AI. Our ability, as inhabitants of this planet, to find ways to work together, to grow together, to create together frameworks, I'm not saying rules, and with the power, the disruption, the destiny-shaping power that AI is bringing, I think we are a bit forced, I think, to work together more than in other situations. This is truly crucial. So my message would be absolutely this, that inside the EU, we are doing our best to stay agile, but also human-centric, and define as best as we can how we can harness the benefits and opportunities of AI while minimizing risk of inequalities, while having also inclusion in our mind. But we are aware that it will not stop at the borders of the EU, and if we do not focus enough energy outside of the EU, and we are doing that in all contexts, that is G7, G20, all contexts, UNESCO, UN, with the OECD, and more, if we are not able to do that, then there can be no discussion of a success. So success cannot be extremely territorial with such a topic.
Thank you. You wanted some comments on it, I see.
I confirm that the global approach is very important, not only a regional one. And to have this global approach, we need the regulatory frameworks that are existing from our organizations. Open science must be encouraged. The recommendation of UNESCO 2019, we are doing a lot of work to help member states to implement it on the ground. And I believe in the power of the nexus between the private sector, the policy makers, and the societies, because we have to work all together while consolidating among each other.
Perfect. Mathias, you are a financial person. I would say, and I think during the history of humanity, investing in education always meant progress, right? Stronger economies, safer societies, and better democracies. Now AI is transforming everything, jobs, security, even how we learn. It's not an easy question, but if you were making the call today, right, where would you invest your energy or your money to make the most meaningful impact? And the second question is, in addition, where will OECD focus on or lead in this new reality?
So, firstly, 100% agreed. I mean, you know, education is, of course, hugely important, including in this context. Now, AI offers many exciting benefits for humanity, and I mean, I'm not going to press my finger on a single point. I mean, I think countries, jurisdictions, as a global community, we need a plan. We need a plan on how we can optimize the benefits while effectively mitigating and managing the risks in a way that doesn't prevent further beneficial innovation. We need to systematically identify what might prevent us from seizing the benefits. We need to systematically identify where the risks are, get the best possible responses, and understand that we will need to change along the way. And we need to do it not just within countries, but we need to do it across countries. And I mean, it's not a simple answer, but whether it is infrastructure, whether it's education, whether it is making sure that we manage risks like information integrity, security, privacy, competition policy implications. I mean, across the spectrum, we've essentially we're gonna invest in the plan, and we've got to execute the plan, and when we see that something works, we do more of it. If we see that something doesn't work, we adjust it based on sharing information, sharing experiences, and coming up with, essentially, in the end, the standards and the best practices and the governance arrangements that work for humanity as a whole. That is actually the methodology that has worked for other technological revolutions in the past, and it will also work with this one. This is just another innovation that we need to channel in a way that is most beneficial for humanity. And I think that that is what we're collectively all thinking about.
Yeah, fully agree. Amandeep, coming to the end, AI is reality, right? So it's moving fast with or without any global framework. After a year of adoption, digital compact, and listening to governments and experts, companies, what have you realized matters the most? And what would be your wish for all of us here, including ministers of education sitting here, how we can move forward using the cumulative power and specific benefit of each of us to create a real impact?
I think what I've learned the most is, like in the private sector, we need to, in public institutions, respond with speed, scale, and ambition. Like, few people thought that this 80-year-old grandmother, which is the United Nations, could put on sneakers and run fast and catch up on the AI's policy challenges, which is what we did with the high-level advisory body on AI, Global Digital Compact, building on the work at UNESCO. I was proud to contribute to the ethics framework during the COVID. And then, we relied on the OECD definition of AI. Why reinvent the wheel? It's the best definition that's out there. So using that, but we sped up and created these standing mechanisms. Now it is up to member states and the private sector and independent experts to work those mechanisms. There will be regular scientific assessments. Policy making doesn't happen in the dark. We are not swayed by either hype or horror, and we do policy making in a sensible way. We also have a forum. It's good, G7, G20, others are having these conversations. This summit here, February, India will host the next AI summit in a sense. It's good that those conversations are happening, but we need a space where all countries are at the table. Since it's about all of humanity, everyone needs to be at the table. So we created that space. Next year in July in Geneva, this global dialogue on AI governance will happen. It'll connect various threads of conversations. Those conversations will continue, just like the scientific work will continue, but we need the connections. We need the connectors that allow everyone to learn, everyone to avoid the worst practices, adopt the best practices, and also have some kind of an early warning mechanism. When we are in a dialogue, and we are informed by science, we can see what's coming around the corner, and then we can adjust. So that adjustment is a national sovereign decision, is a European sovereign decision, but at least the information and the knowledge should be there to allow us to adjust. And the third piece, really, what we've learned is that there is huge, as my good friend Khaled was saying, there could be resentment because of this divide, and AI could reinforce inequalities. Madame Lagarde was speaking about the productivity benefits. Today, you have estimates that go from 0.4%, Darin Acemoglu and colleagues, all the way to 12%. So I don't worry that much about the lower end of the estimate. That doesn't change our world that much. But imagine, we've never seen productivity growth in double digits. Even China at its best, 6, 7%. It's 8% maybe. So when that happens, where is that wealth going to flow to? Are governments even going to be able to tax that wealth? What happens when labor becomes just a subset of capital? So these are issues. I'm not even talking about the risks. I'm only talking about the enormous opportunity. It'll force us to think back and say, oh, we should have collaborated more. We should have not looked at it as competition, as a race amongst ourselves. We should have worked together to address this. And we shouldn't be asking that, oh, we should have worked harder on building capacity around the world to manage this massive transformation. So for us, for the Secretary General, science, policy, capacity, these are the three key elements going forward. Capacity building, the private sector will do its investments. But what we are saying is create a global fund, 3 billion, which at least puts some capacity, minimum capacity in the 90 to 100 countries that are most at risk of getting left behind. Minimum compute, minimum number of GPUs, some open shareable models that can be tuned in that country with local language data sets, some cross-domain talent, so that everyone can start to experiment with it, learn, build the application. So 10, 15 years from now, we don't end in a world where you have trillionaires and people who live up to 200 years, but then you have some parts of the world where there is absolute desperation. So I think this is what my boss says, AI should not stand for advancing inequality. So I think this is really our biggest challenge. And I'm hopeful that all of us combining in the private sector, the EU has been a great supporter of the Global Digital Compact. UNESCO, we work very closely on ethics, science, and with OECD, we have an MOU. We rely on a lot of the in-depth analysis that you do. And most importantly, we rely on the vast majority of countries that are smart powers, like Slovakia. I don't want to say small states because it's really smartness. And I think multilateralism matters to smart powers, to all small states. And the world that's coming at us, I think, requires all of us to come together, small states, private sector, international organizations, to address these challenges.
Thank you very much. It was absolutely also sort of description of our country, because we are also a small country. We are part of the European Union. Today we also celebrate 25th anniversary joining the OECD, which gave us enormous, huge opportunities and prosperity. And that's something what we are absolutely aware of, that collaboration and also friendship and relationships with other countries made us prosper and safe. So this is why also we wanted to organize this forum to bring you all together and discuss those topics, because as you mentioned, there are many, many countries around the world who are far behind, and without the support and the help of all others, they are not able to get as least the service what anybody else is able to get. So please, finally, comments. If you want to comment, the final words. Khaled.
Well, just 4 key words: equilibrium. To reach the equilibrium between creativity, but we need frameworks. Second, consolidation among all stakeholders, ITU, OECD, UNESCO, New York, and establish and empower the nexus between the private sector, the society, and the policymakers. This will enable us as policymakers to increase the skills, and this will build a trust as well. Then it will lead to another keyword, the 4th one, to be able to implement.
Yeah, perfect. Once again, thank you very much to join us here. And please follow me, and we will have the roundtable second, which will be more in details together with tech companies and some experts. And I hope that we will see each other soon, on not just in such a discussions, but on concrete steps we want to support and also implement here in Slovakia. And I hope many of my colleagues will do the same. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to thank all panelists for an engaging, insightful, and frankly, essential discussion. And if this session proved anything, it is that a solution-focused narrative requires the courage to see the flaw not as an endpoint, but as a challenge to do something remarkable. We have opened essential topics and shared many ideas that are not only worth reflecting on, but demanding of coordinated action. We will now take a short break, giving you the necessary opportunity to recharge and connect before our next sessions. And after the break, we will continue with the panel exploring the crucial intersection of artificial intelligence and economic trends, specifically how they are shaping new opportunities, challenges, and the future of the economy. I look forward to welcoming you all in half an hour. Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We now begin the second chapter of today's conference titled Reimagining the Future, Economy and AI in a New Era of Trust, Innovation and Policy. Artificial intelligence is not just evolving, it is rapidly and fundamentally transforming the global economy, reshaping industries, labor markets, and even our societal norms. These systems are becoming increasingly embedded in our most critical decision-making processes. They force us to confront profound questions about trust, productivity, innovation, and the necessary role of public policy. Today's session creates a unique, essential space. It brings together economists from central banks, technology experts, and legal professionals, a multidisciplinary dialogue that balances the optimism of innovation with the necessary caution of impact. Our objective is clear: to illuminate pathways toward a future where AI enhances trust, drives innovation, and supports inclusive global growth. I'm delighted to welcome our panelists, and I invite them to share their critical perspectives on how AI is shaping the economic landscape of tomorrow. We begin with connection between ethics and AI. Please welcome Cardinal Peter Turkson. Welcome to Slovakia, welcome to Bratislava, and thank you for being here. Next, we turn to the law. We welcome Eyal Brook, partner and head of the AI practice group at S. Horowitz & Co. Welcome again to Slovakia. Great to have you here. If AI is the Wild West, then Mr. Brook is the one drawing up the first treatise. Someone has to dissect the rapidly evolving intersection of intellectual property, data privacy regulations, and liability frameworks. Our conversation continues with the perspective of global technology. Azar Coulibaly, General Manager and Associate General Counsel at Microsoft. Hello. Thank you for being here. He navigates the complex terrain for a company that is building the infrastructure of tomorrow, including cybersecurity, competition, and privacy. Our final panelist has the perspective of a cutting-edge AI builder, Tomáš Halgaš, founder and CEO of Sutro. Vítajte. Ďakujeme, nech sa páči. He's redefining product development and leading the creation of an AI platform designed for faster and more secure software development, all emphasizing maximum efficiency and speed. This distinguished panel will be chaired by Michal Horváth, Chief Economist, National Bank of Slovakia. Príjemný dobrý deň. His extensive policy experience and strong academic background makes him a nearly perfect chair. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Right, thank you very much. It's an enormous pleasure and honor for me to sit here and have the opportunity to chair this panel today. Also, welcome from me to the panelists, and welcome to everybody watching this live here in the room or in front of the screen. So. We are here basically to discuss the transformative potential of AI, its upsides, obviously, in terms of productivity, innovation, and so on, but also to reflect a little bit on the risks and how we can address some of the fears that are currently linked to AI. I have to say, I had the privilege of having interesting conversations with the gentlemen here throughout the afternoon, and they have very interesting things to say, so I'm looking forward to our debate tonight. But before we get there, we have a video message from a lady whose name has been mentioned several times today already, Henna Virkkunen, who is the Executive Vice President of the European Commission for Technological Sovereignty, Security and Democracy.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to join you, even remotely, at this important BratislavAI Forum. Artificial intelligence is reshaping the global economy faster than any technology before it. Productivity, competitiveness, and innovation will increasingly depend on how effectively we harness AI. But the same forces that drive opportunity also bring disruption. Balancing optimism with caution is the essence of Europe's approach. On the optimistic side, AI holds immense promise for growth. It can boost our productivity in every sector, from energy to health, from manufacturing to public services. Our AI Continent Action Plan and AI Factories Network are already driving this transition, enabling startups, researchers, and SMEs to scale breakthrough innovations. The upcoming AI gigafactories will anchor Europe's compute capacity and scientific excellence. And through the Apply AI strategy, we connect suppliers and adopters to accelerate deployment across industries. But optimism must go hand in hand with responsibility. The EU is ensuring that growth remains human-centered, fair, and secure. The AI Act, together with the Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act, provides the world's most advanced framework for trustworthy AI. It gives businesses clarity and citizens confidence. Economically, we are mobilizing investments at scale. The forthcoming Competitiveness Fund will multiply digital and deep tech spending fivefold. The Investment and Savings Union will channel a part of Europe's 33 trillion euro in private savings into innovation. And we are simplifying rules to let our companies grow faster with the Digital Simplification Package and a new European business wallet, which we presented last week. And most importantly, we are investing in people. Europe's AI Skills Academy will equip our workforce with the knowledge to use, shape, and govern AI, because human capital remains our greatest competitive advantage. The lesson is clear. AI will not replace people, but those who use AI effectively will outperform those who do not. Europe's mission is to ensure that this transformation strengthens our economy while protecting our values and our social model. This is how we turn technological disruption into strategic renewal, with confidence, with caution, and with purpose.
Yes, unfortunately, Madame Virkkunen couldn't be here with us today, but we'll come back to some of the ideas later in our discussion. So let's get started with the potential upsides, productivity, creativity, innovation. And first I turn to Your Eminence, Cardinal Turkson, to my right here. I think I say the obvious thing when I say that the Church has been around for some time, and as an institution it has witnessed several things in our history: the invention of the printing press, the steam engine, railways, electricity, computers. So where do you place, where would the Vatican place the emergence of AI? How do you see AI in this long historical context? Is this a game changer? In the previous speech by Madame Lagarde, there was mentioned that it can be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution, happening 10 times faster. Are you sort of observing this with dread, or are you, embracing what we observe?
Okay, thank you. And in the first place, thanks to Mr. President and your staff for organizing and putting this together and inviting all of us to participate and to share thoughts and ideas about this phenomenon at this meeting. Indeed, so the list you mentioned, steam engine, electricity, all of these are inventions of the human person, okay? And the video we just saw referred to this in a note of optimism. That has also been, in a way, the stand of the church at a certain point. Last year, in January, when Pope Francis shared his first observations on AI, he referred to that as optimistic. And his sense of optimism, however, was based on the fact that he found in the Bible a passage which says that God's Spirit bestows intelligence, understanding, and skills on the human person to do anything that he wants to do. So based on that, I thought he figured that if this is an expression of God's Spirit, then the outcome must be good. But if the outcome must be good, the outcome is good to the extent that it's the work of human hands. The steam engine, the printing press, and all of these are inventions of the human mind. And as such, they share the nature of the human person. An Australian digital scientist presenting AI and digital technology says that human beings created AI in their image, which just means that just as the human person is full of optimism, so does he also have within himself challenges about failures and whatever. The dialogue we had between the child and the old man at the beginning of this said at one point that they don't trust human beings because they fail, they change their minds and all of that. That's a human person. That was expressed by the church. So the instruments, the elements you mentioned, I'd say, are instruments of the human person. And every instrument has the character of enabling human beings who, on account of their physical limitation, cannot do something to be able to do it. That is what the crane is about. If you go to the harbor and you see the crane lift all the containers, they're lifting loads that human beings with their natural strength cannot do. So every invention of a tool, of any type of instrument, enables us to do something that with our human, physical limitations, we cannot do. So in itself, it's very positive. It's very positive, enabling us to do something that we cannot do. It's up to us to recognize that it's always a tool of our hands. It's up to us to recognize that, the question again that was asked. The human person must never give up the idea of having been the creator of these tools. And having been the creator of these tools, he must not then cede position, making the tool dominate him and making the tool tell it what to do. That's a position that the human person may never accept. So the human person must always be at the center of all of this development. That means that this development must respect the dignity of the human person, its freedom, its sense of responsibility, and its character as a relational being. All of this must be respected by the tool. And it's up to us then to ensure that the tools respect the dignity, the character of the human person. That's our challenge. Not the thing of AI, it is we who have to deal with these basic challenges of the tool.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Those were really excellent words to launch our discussion. And in the spirit of interdisciplinarity, we'll move on to other angles and come back to the very important ethical questions that you have already alluded to in your introductory remarks. So I'm the only economist on the panel, and I'm a humble economist, even humbler than our president of the ECB. But I'm determined to take an economist's angle on some of the issues. And one of the things that we observe with regards to AI is that currently there is enormous amount of investment flowing into the segment. Huge amounts of money being raised, invested physically, but also in sort of non-tangible way. And this raises a few questions also looking back on some of the historical episodes. So now I turn to you, Azar, as a representative of the industry itself. So one thing that economists talk about is whether AI is a winner-takes-all type industry. Because if it's a winner-takes-all type industry, then we have invested all these resources, and a lot of it might be obsolete at the end of the day. Do you share that view? And then when it comes to productivity, the question is whether it's the process of generating these models is the productivity enhancing process itself, or is it the the spreading of the knowledge? So there I would like to ask what Microsoft does in that area. So two probably big questions, but I'm confident you can handle them.
Yes, great questions. And first of all, I'd like to echo the thanks to Mr. President for the invitation. It is an honor and privilege to be here. So no, first, in short, I would say it is not a winner-take-all technology. And I think there's three main reasons for that. I think first and foremost, what we're seeing already today is that our customers, which are governments, nonprofits, small businesses, and large businesses, really value vendor diversity. There's a bunch of different parts of this technology that are very particular to what they need, and I think just on our own, we see almost 2,000 models on Azure today, and they're being used by our customers, and it's not just a couple of models, it's many different ones that can really address those things. I think secondly, a main reason is that the technology stack that underlies AI technology is very, very diverse. And I think at each of those layers of the supply chain, we see different competitors competing, and I think that's only going to continue to grow as we move forward. And so I think that there is no truly vertical integration. It's all interdependent, and so I don't think of there being one winner. In many cases, at each layer of the stack, there are multiple winners. Then if you look at the entire stack, there's even more to go there. And then finally, I think it's really important to note is the robustness of open source in this technology. I think what we're seeing, I mentioned we have almost 2,000 models on Azure, and very, very many of those are open source. And I think what we've seen from open source models is that they can compete in many ways, especially when it comes to particular needs that people have. And so I think the open source community will continue to build, and I think there will continue to be a great deal of diversity at the model level there as well. So I think on that point, I think we should be less concerned about is this a winner-take-all technology, and more concerned about how do we ensure that we all are winners. And I think that's where we get to your second part of the question, which is what are we doing to ensure that? And I think the term we tend to use, and economists tend to use as well, is the concept of AI diffusion or adoption. And really what that means is that what we see in general purpose technologies, such as electricity, which I think you mentioned earlier, is that the real winners are not the societies that invent the technology to begin with, but those that actually manage to diffuse it throughout their society, throughout their economies very broadly. And we think that's where the winners come, right? And that hopefully can mean that every society that is able to do this can truly be a winner here in Europe, and obviously here in Slovakia, but really around the world in the global south and the global north. And so what we are doing at Microsoft is really trying to do our part A on the technology part, which is to ensure that we're building technology that really meets safety principles, that meets openness and access principles, but also ensuring that there's enough skilling in the world, enough people able to adopt that technology and not just do so in high-tech firms or large companies or even governments, but really throughout the society. And so we've now made a commitment. We're spending, I think, $4 billion to ensure that we're going to skill up to 20 million people around the world, which again is really addressing that adoption and diffusion issue, which we think is really where we should be making our focus here, is ensuring that we have the technology, of course, that it is responsible and safe, but more importantly, that it's really being used throughout the society so that it can solve problems and really increase the GDP of the world.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. It's great to hear that no matter what happens, we will be able to use to some extent the infrastructure that has been being built over the last well, couple of years maybe at a dramatic pace. So now I turn to Tomáš, our young entrepreneur from Slovakia, who has founded actually 2 tech startups, sold one of them, currently developing his other project. So what is the, where do you see the potential of AI in your current operations, current projects? In what sense does it make a difference?
Right, so I'm now in the space of AI-generated code, and the grand opportunity here is creating a world where software is no longer a problem. Like imagine you can think of any software and you could have it in minutes right in front of you. Imagine the potential of that to revolutionize like digitization of services, of healthcare, how big companies operate. There's a lot of potential in that. However, the problem with AI-generated code is that it cannot give you any guarantees. So very often it generates code which is not secure, or there's a real risk it will mess up your data. And therefore, there's a lot of space now in the industry for companies like Humble Sutra, where we are developing tools to generate software which can actually give you security guarantees, functionality guarantees, compliance guarantees within your company. But the other space where I have a lot of interest, where my previous company was, we did a social network. I was previously at Facebook, and I thought I could do it better. And so there, the opportunities are immense. This is the first time in history where you can have bots making conversations with thousands of people at the same time. You can test out various narratives, various ways of communicating something, various ways to get across an emotion to millions, billions of people at the same time in a very personalized manner. That is an extremely powerful technology. The biggest challenge there, of course, is to use this technology and this power for good, to bring people together, as Roxana was saying, to build trust in society, rather than all sorts of power tactics of polarizing the society, spreading hate and fear for political gains. And so that will probably be the biggest challenge now.
Thank you. It's great to see. It's fantastic to see how you talk about your business so enthusiastically. You're coming out of Slovakia, but the fact of the matter is that you operate out of places none of which are in the EU. So currently you're sort of placed globally, but sort of from that perspective, where do you see Europe's potential in this global AI race? In the previous panel, we talked about we shouldn't be even aiming for sort of catching up with the best. We should have a different strategy. So what's your take on that?
I mean, we have an office in London, which used to be EU, sadly no longer. Look, let's be honest, seeing Europe as the place which will invent the world's leading models, competing with OpenAI and Anthropic and various big Chinese companies, that's a fairy tale. That's not going to happen. That train has already departed. However, innovation doesn't necessarily have to be cutting-edge frontier model research. When we talk about innovation, there is this very nice model of innovation in 3 layers. On the very top, you do have this frontier innovation, which will mostly happen in Silicon Valley and China. You then have the middle layer, which is applying those technologies to various areas and various fields where a country or a set of countries can have, or regions can have particular advantages. We discussed earlier with the president that in Slovakia that could be healthcare because of the way we uniquely centralize and manage healthcare data. Or it could be in education, where there's a lot of space for bringing a lot of technologies in a smaller environment like Slovakia compared to some of the very big and maybe slower moving countries. And then the third level of innovation is then implementation, production, and proliferation. And again, there's a lot of space there to potentially be for Europe to be a place where AI does not stand for advancing inequality, as Mr. Gill was saying, but creating an environment and space where AI is really proliferated and accessible to a lot of the society through services and through rollouts on a larger scale.
Thank you. I think a lot of the discussion today is happening in the spirit of, AI and humans joining forces to achieve a completely new level of ingenuity, which will enable us to solve a lot of the problems that you just talked about. But is it necessarily the case? And here I turn to Eyal, because there are also fears that extensive use of AI can sort of homogenize homogenize thought, and actually it's an event about out-of-the-box thinking, but we might actually not have that much out-of-the-box thinking once we are using the same box all the time. So what's your take on this? Does AI, or does it look like it, whether AI is going to enhance or inhibit human creativity in areas such as design, writing, or research even?
Okay. First, thanks very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure and honor to be in this respectable and very important event. I think this is one of the most profound questions about our creative future, and the answer is not simple or binary based. It depends really on how we actually choose to design our relationship with AI. So on the one hand, there's compelling evidence that AI can enhance creativity. Basically, it can provide you with thousands of possibilities, which would be humanly very difficult to actually generate. Also, there's the democratization of creativity. Basically, anyone, and that's very exciting because anyone can become an artist now. You don't need to know how to play music, to photography, to write. You can just generate. If you have the vision, you can actually execute it. And that's something quite exciting. However, we must confront the real dangers. And AI models basically are inherently backward-looking. They learn from the existing work, and they tend towards the statistical average, which, as you mentioned, may create the risk of homogenization and aesthetic monoculture. It also leads to another very big question in terms of legal issues, but that's another issue. There's also the legitimate concern about the deterioration and skills atrophy, basically, because like the GPS, when we use it, we actually lose the spatial navigation. So over-dependence on an AI could actually weaken the cognitive muscles that generate the original and creative thought. There's the late Professor Dan Bork. He wrote a very interesting article called Cheap Creativity and What It Will Do. And what he's saying, basically, he's saying that AI not only reduces, basically, the cost of copying or using existing work, but it actually enables the creative process itself in an accessible and inexpensive form. And the risk is, basically, the concern is that soon AI will be able to create a large or even infinite number of works which have been called zombie art, and that may lead to the suppression of authentic creativity. So I think that the key is intentional design, basically. AI should be positioned as a collaborator, not replacement. AI will suggest, and the person, the human, basically will decide. And if we're speaking about education here, I think that education must ensure that people and students basically can learn without AI before actually they can create with AI. I'm a former musician. When I used to play, the piano or the violin or whatever, I used to practice sometimes 5-7 hours a day, and that really developed different skills than generating just create something music, and we should not neglect it. So I think basically that, and also ultimately we should remember that genuine creativity arises from the embodied human experience. It arises from our subjective perception, from feelings, from sadness, from love, from passion, from the search for meaning. And that's something that the AI can replicate. It can mimic, but it doesn't feel, it doesn't have the story, it doesn't have the intention behind. So really, I think as legal and policy professionals, we must create frameworks that protect human basic attribution and creativity. I think that's very, very important. And the technology itself is neutral, basically. It's our choices, basically, that will decide and determine if we enter this golden age of augmented creativity, where people can actually achieve much more, or are we going to a darker age of algorithmic conformity?
So, closing the circle, as Cardinal started, it's a tool, and it's really up to us how we use it, and we have to put the right framework in place. So the second big topic I would like to have a discussion about is trust, and that has already featured in the earlier discussions. And as an economist, trust is a foundational element in advanced societies. Societies that are relatively well-off are characterized by higher degrees of trust in institutions among people. And it's not necessarily by accident. These societies have developed the mechanisms that underpin that trust. So how is this going to work in the world of AI? I mean, if I just think about our area of business in finance, financial markets, so a lot of banking is based on trust. So people put money in the bank. They can potentially withdraw any day, but the banks have long-term investments. Our own business currency in the era of fiat money is all based on trust in a piece of paper and an institutional framework that is behind it. So societies have developed these mechanisms. We have notaries, we have digital signatures. You could say that central bank is a mechanism of having more trust in the system. But how is this going to work in this new era of AI? And here I go back to Tomáš. You have experience with social networks. Can you tell us maybe a few examples of where things can go wrong in terms of either fake content or malfunctions in algorithms that may be unethical, but in the worst cases could be violations of people's rights?
I'll take a maybe slightly controversial angle on this. One of the main issues of why we're seeing a lot of these problems in social networks is that it's very, very hard to measure the things that are most important to us. Like imagine you're running a large social network and you need to define a strategy and decide what the company is going to be optimizing for. You can't say we're going to optimize for trust, happiness, and love. Like, how do you measure that? How do you put that on your financial statement? That's why it's so much easier to measure things like, well, amount of time spent on your platform and the amount of money you're making on advertisements. And of course, what generates the most views, the most time, and the most advertisement clicks? Well, it's polarizing content, things which generate anger or anxiety, and that is, it's a side effect of the setup. I don't think there's anyone in these big social networks who's consciously engineering the social network environment to be evil and biased. I just don't think that's true. And so the real challenge there around trust, safety, and creating a good trust environment is really aligning the I don't want to call it incentives, but aligning what we measure and what we motivate towards with how these companies are actually run. So instead of them running towards some short-termistic, just like monetary short-term goals, how do we create a nice environment where we make it much easier to measure the good things, showcase the good things, and give them more tooling to do the right stuff, whether through regulatory frameworks or otherwise? Maybe the other thing to say about trust. Trust is not just something between two humans. You can have trust towards institutions, trust towards an algorithm, trust towards a particular company. And so there are a lot of these networks that can help us, firstly, build trust towards what you're seeing on your screen being actually true. And then you build up the further trust of what other people are saying, and what's shown to you from other people is actually perhaps true or at least genuine. And so there are lots of ways to build out these trust networks, but it's not easy and requires a lot of courage internally in the company to go against what's the easiest thing to measure and easiest thing to implement.
Right, thank you. This allows me to pass the baton on to Azar, and I exactly wanted to ask if there are technological solutions to questions of trust. Do we need legal or other institutional solutions, or can we rely on technology only in this area?
Well, I think, first of all, so our business runs on trust, because ultimately we build tools, as you were mentioning before, and we need our customers to know that these tools are trustworthy. And so ultimately, if they cannot believe that, they will not acquire those tools. And I think the two key components to ensuring that trust, I think the first is transparency, and the second is technical control and actual truth behind it from a technical perspective. And so I think, first of all, what we have done at Microsoft and what we've encouraged others to do is be very transparent about responsible standards that we set and the processes that we go through when we are building our own tools. When we're building tools that can be used directly by our users, think of things like our Copilot. So we actually explain exactly what went into our secure by design standard and how we built the tool itself so that you can see from a transparent perspective, how is this tool built and how can I know that I can trust it? But I think it's also very important when we're speaking of these technical controls that we also are tool builders for tool builders. Right? We expect that many of our users are building their own products on top of our tools or using our tools to build entirely new tooling. And so what we also have done is to say, look, it's not only that we are providing you with transparency on how we are operating and how we are ensuring that AI is done in a secure manner, but also providing the ability for our customers when they're building tools to have the secure by design tooling. And this is where the technical aspects come in, because many of our customers have asked, and what we're providing them with is with the ability to ensure that they're building content filters or prompt filters or things of that nature into the very things that they design. So I think it is both. I think you need to have that transparency regarding what you're doing, but that ultimately you will need some technical controls, both in what you build, but also in what you allow others to build, and make sure that that's available so that, again, everyone can trust this. And not to be a broken record, but I think it's very important because without trust, we will not have the very diffusion that I think we all agree on is necessary for this to become societally impactful. Because if people can't trust the tools that they're using, they can't trust the outputs that it generates, then they will never use it at the levels and scale that's needed for this to truly be impactful.
Right. In spite of there being technological solutions, we have over the recent times witnessed the proliferation of fake content, deep fake videos. Most of the time they're intended for fun. There used to be an AI Jesus channel, a fake Jesus discussing things. But there are other, obviously, politicians are often targets of deepfake videos. But I mean, I can very well imagine, including in the financial sector, a much more malign use of such videos, which poses certain dangers. There are also fake documents now easily produced using AI. So AI, with your legal background, what do you think are the implications of these for consumer confidence, for the functioning of markets, and your legal take on this side of AI?
Yeah. I think deepfake and AI-generated misinformation basically represent one of the most important and severe threats to the market integrity and the economic stability. And in this age, basically, we're entering an era where the truth itself is becoming questionable, and the ability to actually distinguish the authentic information from the sophisticated fabrication, basically, will determine whether markets will be able to operate efficiently and whether consumers can actually make informed decisions. So financial markets, basically, they operate on trust. And when that information can be fabricated with extreme ease, and the potential for the manipulation becomes existential. Now, I think perhaps more dangerous than the individual incident is the systemic erosion of trust in society. And when people, investors, cannot confidentially distinguish real from fake, market will become efficient, basically, and people will lose that sense. We saw recently, in the last 5 years, it started in 2019, 224 euro were stolen. The following year, 35 million in the Emirates. In 2024, last year in Hong Kong, 25 million were stolen by deepfake video when someone received an email and he felt that this was a dodgy, this was a bit of a phishing, but then he got this call with apparently CFO and all the leading people, and he was convinced. This year, in April, basically, again in Hong Kong, some deepfakes were used to actually overcome the bank's mechanism, and out of the 44 banks that were tried, 30 failed. So those people actually opened the accounts in 30 banks and used this to steal money and to actually launder money. So I think that this is a real problem and threat. And the problem is that when it requires verification, the society may eventually actually revert to the primitive trust mechanism, like, trusting just physically present merchants. And of course, if the transaction costs much more money, eventually that would go to the insurance and legal compliance, that would go eventually to the consumer. So I think addressing these threats basically required a multi-layered approach. We need specific criminal legislation, and some countries have already dealt with that and legislate such rules for deepfake. I think that's very important. But also we need financial markets regulation in terms of digital using technology, for example, perhaps blockchain or other solutions like real-time authentication protocols. But also we need, of course, public awareness. So I think when information itself becomes unreliable, the entire system breaks down, and this is a really important threat that we have to address. And massive public awareness should be educated and encouraged.
Which brings me to my next set of questions to Cardinal here. And it's, let's turn a bit more philosophical here. It will be a question about free will and moral responsibility. So does the emergence of AI challenge our understanding of what free will is, and who carries the responsibility for decisions? And the follow-up to that is about ethical principles. So we talked about technological solutions to the issue of trust. There are probably legal ways of going around it, but how about ethics, culture in the society? What kind of principles do we need to embed in the people's minds to have a safe deployment and development of AI?
Yeah, thanks. And to tag on briefly onto the discussion about trust, AI, and all of that, probably I think the word came up towards the end, reliability. When we're dealing with tools, it's a question of their reliability to achieve what they're meant to do. Trust, I think, is very human virtue. And if there's trust in bank, the trust is in the bank and the people operating the bank who are trusted to be able to deliver what they promise they will deliver and all. So trust for me is a very human attribute that is difficult to kind of invest in a tool. There is a movie out called Megan, and it's about a young girl who was given an AI, a robot, as a companion. And the attachment grew so much that the girl will not go to school unless they allow the robot to come along. Okay, yeah, because it's like she considers life to be inseparable from this type of thing. And it became a question, therefore, of the girl feeling that the meaningfulness of her life was bound with what the robot was allowed to do. So that's how this conditioning can take place. A question that you ask about, ethics and AI use and all of that. I think the ethical question is based on the free will. When, for example, the church talks about AI and digital technology and all, it always says that we must place the human being at the center. This we also heard a little bit from the president this morning. The primacy of the human being in all human endeavors is something that we push. And we do that because we say that the human person essentially is free. The dignity of the human person entails his freedom or her freedom. When the human person is not free, then there's something against his or her personality. So to ensure that somebody is truly a person, it's not simply the dignity that we're talking about, but also the freedom of the person to exercise what he or she is. And this is closely related also to the second thing, which is about relationship. Now, freedom is not complete unless there is responsibility. So when so scientists in their freedom go to their labs and exercise and come up with all gadgets, whatever, their sense of freedom must lead them to recognize their responsibility with what they are producing. So freedom, yes, there's something that is espoused for all human beings. But freedom is not complete unless it is matched with a sense of responsibility. And the two must always be taken together. So what we call ethics is the expression of this union between freedom and responsibility. Out of this is born what we call ethical. So what is good to use because it's my expression of responsibility, and what is not good to do because, again, my expression of responsibility. So the question of ethics, which underlies the conversation that we're holding now about AI and its relationship with the human person, yes, in freedom, scientists can explore and do everything. But in freedom, you need to also recognize that what you do has a responsibility, or you're responsible, and you must consider the responsible implications. So the two must go together to describe what we call the ethical roots or foundation of what we do.
Thank you. Yes, I've been a scientist myself for a little while, and also, I mean, in every institution, currently in our institution, we also have an ethical code which, in a way, spells out some of the things that are not written in legislation and defines good conduct, good practice. But and obviously, I can see
because you cannot codify them all.
Exactly.
It has to do from within,
Exactly. And a lot of it comes natural to well-meaning people. But yeah, unfortunately, humankind and humanity involves its darker side as well. And sometimes for that, we need legislation. So this is where I turn to my...
That's what the Australian AI scientists said, that we've created tools in our image. Just as there's dark side to us, so can we also make tools with dark sides. And they can do the type of things, AI, that thing you call about sloppy AI?
Yes.
That's material on AI which is now worth producing. But they still produce for the market because of, funds. So the sloppy material, in my sense, when, for example, you go into, a sovereign AI development, that's a way that you take charge of your data and cut out what is sloppy and what is necessary.
Yes, in his previous intervention, Eyal here talked about the possible need to rethink our penal codes, for example, in response to the use of deepfakes and types of fake documentation. I would pose a question this time slightly differently. If we need sort of a broader rethink of our legal framework, even internationally or globally, in response to the rise of AI, and what the steps that you would suggest to start with at this stage of development?
In terms of accountability and transparency, well, I think traditional legal frameworks, basically, they assume the human decision-making, which can be interrogated and can be attributed and be held responsible. Now, AI basically disrupts this assumption because basically it makes the algorithm make opaque decisions, so-called black box, and the responsibility is diffused. So harm is very difficult to attribute. So we need, in this respect, entirely a new legal architecture. And I think that we need some sort of shared responsibility where clear allocation at each level would be attributed. So, for example, developers may be liable for the code quality, for the testing and documentation under the professional duty of care. For example, deployers would bear strict liability and deployment decisions, and then data providers should warrant the accuracy and lawfulness, and end users will be held liable for unreasonable decisions, for example. I also think that, like in the EU, basically, the risk-based approach is quite right, basically, and the AI system needs graduated regulation proportional to the harm. So in that respect, minimal risk system may require basic disclosure, because you don't want to do it something, as we spoke before, about something too harsh and lose the race. And limited risk, basically, will need the transparency. And high risk may require explainability, mandatory human oversight, and bias testing, and the regular audits and incident reporting. Because individuals affected by AI, and AI decisions should have the right to a meaningful explanation, basically. You can't say, you know, the algorithm decided. This is something that cannot work, basically. So I think that different sectors may need tailored rules. For example, serious violation may carry laws, as we said, criminal penalties, and international harmonization, I think, is very important through multilateral treaties and model legislation, which is essential. And also frameworks must be adapted through regulatory sandboxes. That's something very important that was done recently in Israel to a great success. I think it's very important in a sort of supporting environment, and that's good also for the government, for the regulator, and also for the private practice. So that's something which is advisable. And AI basically system, they shape the fundamental aspects of our life. So we need laws to actually presume transparency and distribute liability, basically, because transparency and accountability are prerequisites, basically, for legitimate and responsible AI, which is very important.
Right. So this is the point in our discussion when I come back to the introductory address by Madame Virkkunen. You also referred to EU law in a positive way, potentially, almost. And I turn to Azar. You're a lawyer as well by training, and as a part of your duties in the company, you travel a lot, and you have the opportunity to observe different systems around the world. And I would pose the question about the EU regulation about AI. Are we doing the right thing? Are we finding the right balance between protection of people's rights and supporting a rapidly growing industry, or is there something that you would change because it's more of a barrier to innovation at this stage?
Well, first of all, building on what was just said, I agree. I think ultimately we must have responsible innovation. We must have human-centric innovation. And I think the best way to get there is a risk-based approach. And I think what is, central to the types of regulation and legislation that work best, I think, in this space is that they have that risk-based approach, that they are interoperable. I think that's where you said harmonization. I think that is so key, is to not just think in a silo, but actually think about how will this apply across a vast spectrum of different countries, of different use cases. And in many cases, that's, I think, most important to make sure that we do have not a winner take all, but actually that everyone can be winners, that we allow all parts of our economy that are using these technologies to be able to bring that technology to other countries and other spaces in a way that is relatively easy. So I think the interoperability is quite key there. I think, again, having a risk-based approach. And then finally, I think being flexible. I think you mentioned the sandbox approach, but flexibility is key. And I think that is one thing. I think you're alluding to the recent move for simplification of the AI Act and other aspects of European legislation. I think what is really nice to see from the EU, and we're very supportive of, is this move to flexibility. It is actually very important, I think, as this technology is moving, that we look and see how can we be flexible, and of course values-based, of course risk-based approaches that are flexible enough to meet the evolving needs. I think if we can have those two things and a level of interoperability where it is multilateral, it is really bringing values-based approaches from different stakeholder groups together, I think we can get to a level of regulation that is both helpful to make sure we are being responsible and human-centric, but also ensuring that we have the level of innovation and, again, the ability to diffuse that is needed for this to be a truly impactful technology.
Thank you. As we move on to the next stage in our discussion, I would slightly broaden the definition of public intervention when I turn to Tomáš. Obviously, you can reflect on what has been said about the legal framework and the legal constraints in the AI world. But my question would be more general about the role of public intervention in this area. And there, inevitably, we go into issues of sort of fairness, equity, functioning of the labor market, functioning even on the business environment, access to finance. So where do you see, as a young entrepreneur, the big gaps where the state could do more and better?
Right. Look, we don't want the AI environment to be the Wild West. We don't want people to go and do all sorts of crazy, dodgy things with our data and to do very irresponsible things on the internet and on social networks. Really what you want to achieve is a is an environment where you help you help the people who will be responsible to rise on the global stage the fastest. Now, but that's very nuanced, right? Because you cannot put really harsh regulations to start with, because you will realize that your homegrown responsible AI developers don't have a chance against the more aggressive, gung-ho developers from US and China. And so you realize that actually what you want to get to is a very delicate balance where you want to create a really good economic environment, very good entrepreneurial environment, a unified legal system with initiatives like EU Inc., and create environments where you can really build up the AI startup ecosystem so that we have a bunch of leading companies around the world, and then you can start tightening the screws on regulation. Because, that way you actually get very successful European, that's the undertone, European companies out there who are actually doing things ethically, rather than getting just like overrun by Chinese and US models. Now, there is another interesting sub-question there, which is around the other kind of forms of public intervention. We don't have to just regulate, we can also create opportunities. There are lots of opportunities. For example, there was a really nice case study with the UK in banking, where they created certain unified APIs, and suddenly it completely gave rise to the UK as a financial innovation hub. And so there's a lot of space to do these kind of things around the EU, whether that's in healthcare or less popular in defense, but I think it has to be said, or education, that's the direction that we are willing to go with. So it's not just regulation, there's creating sandbox environments, creating better regulatory environments, creating a really good economic and legal environments.
Thanks. Again, going back to me being an economist, and even though people generally think that economists only care about growth and money and productivity, and we do care about fairness, and we do care about equity as well. And actually, in our bank, we did a little experiment with AI. We tried to assess internally the impact of AI on people's productivity, efficiency, but effectively it was about how well they're going to do in a different world. And the picture that emerged is rather interesting and rather complex. It's not so easy, because there are different people, obviously, with different skills, but they're also doing different tasks, and there are sort of generalist tasks, there are specialist tasks. Some of them are routine, some of them are non-routine. And it's ultimately a combination of these things that determines how an individual is going to do in the world of AI. But I think a quick takeaway from that study would be that people who are already very good and have skills that are complementary to AI, they're going to do really well. And it may help some people at the bottom. But the question is when those kinds of jobs are ultimately going to be taken over by AI completely, and so they'll have to. So what in such a world where there is this potential for increased division, what kind of policies do we need to have?
Yeah. So a study out of England was talking about how the lack of digital training for workers puts them at risk. And there's an invitation there to do extra supplementary training for workers, get them aligned with the digital industry to be able to maintain their jobs. So traditional workforce preparation is not being able to withstand or stand against the current world market, labor market dominated by AI. People need to be AI literate to be able to keep jobs, and that's stuff coming out of Britain. Additionally, the positive thing to note about AI is also, since again, this is motivated by education and all of that, there's an experiment coming out of New York called the Empire Initiative, which is how AI can be used to enhance education for all policy. Okay, and the education for all policy is the use of AI to be able to distinguish between students with different competence, those slow learners and fast learners, those with eye vision impairment, hearing impairment, so to discern the different status of the different students to be able to deal with them in their education practice. It's an experiment that's going on. And they make this available 24 hours, 7 days a week, okay, to help with the education of students. So AI positively then can be used as it were to facilitate education for all type of programs without leaving anybody outside. At one point, if it was said that the SDGs was for dignity without limits, AI in that sense can promote education for all without limits. And that's a big advantage that we can look up to.
Go ahead. Just to say in balance, I mean, yeah, there's this framing, and a lot of people are scared that AI will take very large swathes of jobs. In the US, there was some statistic that 60% of the population is worried that AI could take their job. That actually, modern projections suggest that it will be more like 6 to 7%. Which is still large, don't get me wrong, but it's not that catastrophic. But even a stronger trend is AI not taking jobs, but changing jobs. So the same way as we started expecting literally everyone to know how to use a telephone or to use the internet, the same expectation will be with AI. We will just expect people doing most jobs to be very good with AI and to be able to use it for various purposes. The third interesting effect, though, in this space is the effect of AI creating new jobs. So first of all, there's a lot of jobs around AI engineers, AI integrations. There's also creating these legal frameworks around AI and kind of integrating AI legally into various processes and environments. But also, ultimately, AI is a massive increaser of efficiency and productivity, which should create more general wealth, which should give us more time to spend on fun things.
Excellent. These are actually the final words of our panel discussion. At this stage, we have to conclude. And I'm really grateful, gentlemen, for this interdisciplinary discussion on AI. We've taken different perspectives and hopefully gave something valuable for the audience tonight to think about. So thank you again for being here, for your thoughts, and thanks to the audience as well tonight.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for coming to Bratislava, to Slovakia, and thank you so much for your contribution to this summit. All the best to you. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. Hope to see you soon again. And we're slowly but shortly coming to an end. And I think even artificial intelligence, the engine of today's event, needs a moment of silence by now. Suppose there is one singular, non-negotiable takeaway from this powerful summit. In that case, thinking AI out of the box is not merely a slogan. It is a moral imperative for leadership, because the future isn't about what AI can do, but what we, as humans, can ethically and courageously choose to do with it. This reminds us of the infinite digital universe that we're all a part of. But the final word of today's summit isn't mine to give. It is my pleasure to invite to the stage Tomáš Drucker, Minister of Education, Research Development and Youth of the Slovak Republic, and Michal Valko, Chief Models Officer at Stealth AI Startup and Research Scientist at INRIA, to share their closing remarks and formally bring today's high-level summit to a close. Minister?
The distinguished guests, we stand at a moment when technology is reshaping
the world with a speed that demands our full attention. And artificial intelligence, it's not just improving our tools, it's challenging how economies evolve, how our societies hold together. And as we look ahead, fairness and human dignity must stay at the center. Workers will need support and skills to navigate new realities. Developers and policymakers must commit to transparency and accountability. And we have to confront the widening gaps head-on. Those already at disadvantage cannot be pushed further aside as this transformation accelerates. And reducing the distance is fundamental to an inclusive and stable future. The BratislavAI Forum has been the Slovak contribution to the emerging global architecture of AI governance, building on the work begun in Paris and pointing toward the global conference in India next year. It has been the space to tackle the ethical, economic, and security foundation of human-centered approach. And as we move forward, we must not lose sight of trust. As it was mentioned, trust grounded in ethics, in safety, in responsibility, and in the assurance that people remain at the heart of every decision. Without this trust from the public, from families, from communities, from parents, no system will be strong to carry the change ahead of us. And now, instead of closing a chapter, we pass the baton. This forum is the next step, one we offer to our partners and colleagues around the world. Let's stay connected, please. Meet more often, work more closely, and carry this effort forward with the same energy we brought into this room. If we act together across governments, institutions, industry, and research, we can share a future where technology strengthens our societies and we can really achieve the responsible outcomes which are today unpredictable. We have all chances to improve our lives. The responsibility is significant, but the same is the opportunity. And I think the future is still in our hands. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your experience you shared in the morning during our ministerial session. Thank you all the guests during the roundtables, because I think it was really amazing. But once again, this is not the end of the chapter. Please take the race, take the baton. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Balko.
Thank you, Tomáš. It was a pleasure to share the stage with you on multiple occasions. Dear distinguished guests, well, thank you. After today's panels, I'm convinced of one of the things. AI is moving really fast, so fast that when I open my laptop every morning, I think that, the whole world updated tonight, right? And I forgot to install some new patch, so I'm lost myself, and in research, I have to say, even I am secretly working on things that might make those updates even more dramatic. Let's just say new scaling laws, massively test-time compute will make the next chapter very interesting. I cannot say more, but believe me, it's big. But that's exactly why cooperation matters. Because when a few actors hold the compute, the data, the infrastructure, as we discussed, the rest of the world is not co-writing the future. They're simply the spectators. And I don't think any of you came here to Bratislava to be spectators. The point that I want to emphasize is that Europe has unique opportunity. As I answered to our president over the lunch, we can, in this region, can take the best of the worlds. From China, we can learn from power of execution
under the limited resources, building big things quickly, efficiently, and creatively. And from the United States, we can learn the values of fewer barriers, fewer excuses, adaptively removing obstacles, and creating an environment where the talent wants to come, stay, experience, and prosper. And so in Central Europe, can combine these things, these strengths and discipline, openness, speed, and freedom. It will not just be part of the AI way. We will really help to steer it. So now let me turn to something that came up repeatedly today, because here you're really actors in decisors' policy, right? You're declaring the policy. You have the power that you, the leaders of international or perhaps intergalactic institutions, have, because the talent and ambition is completely useless if policy makes deployment impossible or even unsafe. Right? So this is not really just about individual thinking machines, but about collectives, large systems, humans and data, algorithms that can work together. Well, economic mechanisms like incentives, contracts, pricing become fundamental design tools, not just to reward the compute, but to really align behavior with social welfare, with collective values. And so from policy and governance standpoint, we need to think about how to create these markets for AI, not just AI companies. It means we can design mechanisms that really internalize those externalities, right? So manage information asymmetries that exist now and protect local knowledge and diversity. So what does it mean practically, all these big words, right? So what the policy levers actually need to be done. So first, we need to think of perspective all the stakeholders that are affected by AI. So users first. We want systems that are secure, reliable, sustainable. They don't want to wander together if AI is hallucinating, overheating, planning to charge them for premier subscription they didn't ask for. Companies, right? We need to run them. They need deployment that is fast but also safe, because slow deployment kills innovation. And we know that very well, And so unsafe deployment kills trust. And so these governments meant to create policies that make it attractive to anyone to cooperate. And finally, industry, academia, small countries, startups, and finally governments here, there are a lot of governments represented here, themselves might have to secure this competitiveness. If regulation only slows down things and doesn't help it, we lose the regulation throttle. We also lose in the competitiveness. So the real job of policymakers, my humble opinion, because I'm not one of them, is to strike this right balance that lets us move fast, move safely, but not over one another. So this work is ahead of us, bringing everyone to the same table, balancing innovation, safety, keeping AI accessible, even if it becomes more powerful, making sure that small countries or powerful countries, as I heard, smart countries, researchers, even without 100,000 of GPUs, still have real seat in shaping the future. So nothing of the future of AI is predetermined. We're not just passengers, in a self-driving bus with no brakes. If we can still choose the route, and who gets to ride with us. So thank you for the conversation, thank you for the honesty, and thank you for Slovakia for proving that even a small country can host a conversation that the whole world needs to hear.
Wow. Thank you very much for your words. Powerful message.
Thank you
and thank you for having me. All the best to you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we are definitely coming close. So once again, thank you very much for your insightful and forward-looking closing remarks. And to all our distinguished guests here today, to our dear viewers and listeners on Slovak television and radio, thank you all for your essential participation in this dialogue. I wish you a pleasant rest of the evening, and may your thoughts keep moving AI out of the box. All the best. Take care.